Saeb Erekat, a leader of the PLO terror organization, turned terror supporter and anti-Israel boycott leader of the Palestinian Authority, is now sick with the coronavirus. The Palestinian Authority asked for him to be transferred to Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, an Israeli hospital that the Palestinian Authority and Erekat himself support boycotting. Talk about irony, but it gets worse. Okay, first of all, this is a lose-lose situation for Israel, and I will explain why in a second. So Israel did accept him, and they're treating him right now, okay, in Jerusalem. However, first it is important for you to understand the total irony and hypocrisy of this situation. Erekat is a past and current leader who supports Israel's destruction and supports the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. Yet, here he is, transferred to Israel for medical treatment to try for Israel to save his life from the coronavirus. But it gets worse than that. As Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, recently tweeted, "It's ironic that a top PLO official accepted treatment in an Israeli hospital, even after endorsing the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement and spreading a libel that Israelis intentionally infect Palestinian Arabs with COVID-19. Palestinian hypocrisy at its finest versus Israeli devotion to life." Great tweet. This is the same Saeb Erekat who praised the terrorist who murdered Israeli minister Rehavam Ze'evi. Erekat actually wrote a letter of praise to the terrorist, saying, quote, I write to you, my dear brother, expressing my deep sense of solidarity and brotherhood. All right? He supports killing Jews. He supports paying terrorists in jail who murder Jews. And the same Erekat who spearheaded a legal investigation at the United Nations against Israel for allegedly poisoning Yasser Arafat, which we didn't. Yet, Erekat wants treatment in an Israeli hospital to save his life? Yes, Erekat is the same person, part of the Palestinian Authority, who decided to boycott Israel from Palestinian Authority sending patients to Israeli hospital. And now he and his family and the Palestinian Authority are entrusting Israel to save his life? How ironic. Either he and the Palestinian Authority truly believe Israel is evil and deserving of all their venom, or they know that Israel is an unbelievable country, even willing to save the life of an enemy who actively works to destroy Israel, both by supporting terror and with diplomatic warfare. So why is Israel in a lose-lose situation? Well, if we do save his life, then he and the Palestinian Authority will continue with their anti-Israel activity, regardless of the fact that we saved his life. However, if he dies, then they will blame us, the Jewish state of Israel, for his death. Because the truth never matters to the Palestinian Authority and to all those who believe in the fake cause called Palestine. Otherwise, they would have ensured that billions of international aid would have been used to help them develop good hospitals instead of funding the terror efforts to destroy Israel, and then they wouldn't have to transfer him to Israel. They'd have the good service in their own hospitals. And finally, if Israel would not have accepted to treat him at Hadassah Hospital, we would have been blamed for being evil and not treating him. So, even though we are in a lose-lose situation, the Jewish state of Israel focuses on saving lives, even the life of our enemy who wants to destroy us. Now, while it personally makes my blood boil that we are treating this arch-terrorist in our hospital, I do understand why it is the best policy for Israel. And in the end, we will beat our enemies in the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, who use terror and diplomatic warfare to destroy Israel. We will beat them in other ways. They will be a blip in the history books, while Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, remains strong, vibrant, and dedicated to helping any and all who need help. God bless Israel, and boy are we blessed to live in a generation where the Jewish state of Israel exists.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.